Hi everyone, how's everyone doing here today? Thank you for watching. And yesterday we had the State of Union by President Biden, which I watched in full, and I just wanted to talk about it and just go over some of the highlights. If you haven't seen it yet, you can find it, I have no doubt you could find it on YouTube, and plenty of other news networks we're talking about. A lot transpired. I'm not going to go through every single solitary thing that happened, but I do just want to cover some of the highlights, which I thought were pretty interesting. And I thought this one was better than the one he did last year, which was February 2023. I might be off on the dates, but this one he sounded a little more animated, and he covered a bunch of different things, and he was also pretty strategic. And once again, the Republicans show their true grace and dignity and behave like absolute professionals and show the absolute... Yeah, I'm kidding. No, there was a little heckling there, not as bad as before. One of the there were some guests there that were no big surprise, like Nancy Pelosi was there. Lauren Boebert was there, looking not too very happy, just kind of sat there with this post on her face. Surprisingly, she was one that didn't really say anything. Not that I saw or heard. George Santos was there, which I thought was pretty interesting. And even though he was expelled from Congress, from what they explained, even a former member can still show up there, even if the circumstances of why he left or was ousted are a little bit questionable. Hey, I don't think he really made any headlines. Like, he was just there, he was like a fly on the wall. But when Biden first walked in, first thing he introduced Jill Biden, and then President Biden showed up. Did a slow walk, very friendly, very greeting towards everyone, trying to greet people on both sides of the, he wasn't really too much more on one or the other. The one thing that minor stood out was Marjorie Taylor Greene. She looked like she just got back from a ball game from a losing team that consistently loses, and yet for some reason she decides to keep on supporting. She was like in this red top with a MAGA hat on, and I'll get into that a little bit later. She had these like pins that she was trying to hand them, and Joe basically handled it with just looked. He took a pin, which again I'll get into later, and just kept on going. Oh, believe me, it's going to get better. So, immediately on his speech, things went a little off smoothly. And naturally, there was more excitement from the Democrats and the Republicans. Duh. Mike Johnson, who's the current speaker, who sat in the back, with Vice President Kamala Harris. He showed a little professionalism in the beginning, friendly greeting and stuff, but that changed rather quickly. And here were some of the key things. Biden referenced Trump several times, but he always represented him as the predecessor. Never used him by name, which I thought was wise. Because one, the name would entitle a certain degree of respect to me, which Donald Trump deserves absolutely nothing. One of the key things he pointed on is the threat on democracy in regards to January 6th, where he gave references to Lincoln and the Civil War, and how freedom and democracy were under assault. Pardon me if I'm reading some notes here. And he said how his predecessor wants to bury January 6th. And the point he made is, you can't love your country only when you win. And that got a good round of applause. There was also a little friction there, but that wasn't really the, turning point, or the boiling point, I should say, for some. He talked off on 45's stance on Russia, and if I remember correctly, the way Biden put it is, which he said to Putin, is that we are not going to walk away, especially in regards to like the support and the aid he's been providing for Ukraine since Putin invaded it. And he said basically his predecessor, even as Donald Trump once quoted, said that he would let Putin do whatever he wants, to Ukraine and to other countries, and he wouldn't stop from there. And that is actually a very good point, believe it or not. You may not like Biden, and I get it, but, he brought up a lot of good points during the State of the Union. And before, when he originally got in, there were some of the Supreme Court justices there, and he greeted them, with a certain amount of courtesy. But once he was on stage, he pointed out to how Trump likes to brag of, what he did with Roe versus Wade, which he wasn't the only one. He's not solely responsible for it, but he likes to take all the credit for it anyway. And ever since then, that has been a wedge that has caused several losses for the Republicans on many different elections. And how he said, like, 45 was bragging about restricting women's abortion rights, putting a lot of emphasis on the conservatives at the Supreme Court, and they did not look too pleased, and that was rightfully so. Say what you will about them, those are corrupt conservatives that shouldn't even be on the Supreme Court. Believe me, if there was a way to get them ousted, plenty of us would be, striving to make that happen. Then he got on to immigration, and that's where things got really very interesting. And again, now he also pointed out that saying he wouldn't demonize them by saying saying that they poison the blood of our country, which is in regard to a stupid racial and xenophobic thing that Trump said, which is also similar rhetoric from Adolf Hitler, and also how he used to regard them as vermin and stuff. So that got a lot of, that started starting to push the buttons. But the most important thing that he highlighted on was the border wall crisis and the things that have been going on down there lately. And that's when he hit Republicans the hardest. That's where he had the most outbursts, and he primarily talked about the bipartisan bill that came up, and that it could have done a lot. He went over a lot of the different things from like border security and stuff like that. And, even that's when Marjorie Taylor Greene got a little bit more. She started outbursting a lot. I couldn't hear specifically what she said, but that definitely, pushed her buttons. And the simple truth is that he's right. You wanted to solve the problem. How many times have we heard Republicans and people on Fox, also on Fox, complain about the crisis at the border or migrants coming in, the invasion? We keep hearing that a lot. Fentanyl and stuff. Is it as bad as they make it out to be? No, because it's mostly fear-mongering. And don't get me wrong, it is a problem that should be addressed. But they had a bipartisan deal there, ready to push forward, but then their stupid cult leader, Trump, said, no, I don't want that happening because it's going to make Biden look good, and plus he needs it as his talking point because he doesn't really have anything else, let alone the Republicans on a whole, as far as policies go. And, Biden drove that point home, and will it happen in the near future? Probably not. But I don't think he should give up on it. I think he should keep pushing for and trying to solve. And the bottom line is, the GOP and the Republican politicians out there, the ones who helped enable this bill to be scrapped, you don't get a say in the matter anymore. You don't get to bring up the border or fentanyl or any of that other stuff. Obviously, you're going to do it but you got to do it with credibility, which you have absolutely none. Because this behavior, it proves one thing. You don't really care about the border. You don't care how many Americans die of fentanyl. You just need yet a boogeyman to fearmonger. Not sound like Michael Douglas and the American president, but, telling who's to blame for it and making them afraid of it. That's it. Build a wall. That'll make it all go away. Only Trump can solve this problem. How many times have we heard this BS? Plenty of times. Plenty of times. Some of the things that I noted the most were some of the special guests there from Joe Biden. They had Kate Cox. She was the woman from Texas who had gotten pregnant. I talked about it in a previous video. It was a planned pregnancy, and she was given approval by the courts to go out and get an abortion because doctors, medical professionals, told her it was a necessity. She had to get the abortion because this baby was regrettably not going to survive. And I think it was Ken Paxton, the name, I don't know, some lowlife who just brought it to the Supreme Court in Texas, and then they reversed it. And she was forced to flee the state, and she eventually got the abortion, but, it was a lot of hurdles that she had to jump through. And this was, like I said previously, Biden mentioned this about, this is the problem that the overturning of Roe v. Wade has caused. and he still wants to fight to codify abortion rights, for women's health care. The other one that also stood up for me was a woman named Betty Mae Fikes. Pardon me if I'm mispronouncing that, but she was a civil rights advocate, and she marched in Selma, Alabama, back on 1965 during Bloody Sunday, and that's something else that Biden pointed out, talking about the civil rights, more specifically the right to vote, which he also talked about how Republicans have been passing laws to restrict voting access and make it harder for people to vote, especially that laws that are designed to target people in marginalized groups. The less people that vote, the better their chances are winning. Well, obviously Biden's opposed to that and wants to expand on rights. And he also did bring up Gaza, and there was Rashida Tlaib and some others. They were holding up signs. I forget what they were saying, but they were advocating for the lives of Palestine. And he didn't go into, as far as I know, too many specifics, but he did mention that, and about wanting to do what he can to bring the hostages back and also to preserve the lives of Palestine. He mentioned some type of thing he's trying to set into motion, where trying to send ships along the border without American soldiers actually setting foot, but he being able to get aid to the people in Gaza, the ones the civilians of Gaza that are suffering. So there were some other hecklers there. There was supposedly one man up in the bleachers who got arrested, and from what I read, he was the father of a Gold Star family, so he was speaking out that he had a son that died during the when Biden ended the war in Afghanistan, and he got a lot of flack for that. Understandably so. Like I said, I sympathize with the father, and I understand this concern for his son. Thoughts and prayers to him and his family. I don't know if that's the right way to get the message across, but I kind of get why he did it. But who do you blame more for that? Do you blame Biden for the way he handled it, or do you blame Trump for releasing all the Taliban? I mean, there's ways you can debate that. And it's not something Trump would ever do. And there was a lot more, but those were the key takeaways that I had for that one. Especially the guests. I thought the bringing of Betty Mae, that was more to appeal not only for voter access, but also to appeal for the African American community. Lately, Biden's polling has been going down. He's more even with Trump. I don't have any specific numbers. And to me, polling is important, but I don't put too much faith into it because it focuses on the initial moment. Biden also talked about his age. He talked about ideas because he knows that's a lot of things going on. And maybe some voters might still be hesitant about his age. But like it or not, Biden has gotten way more accomplished than Donald Trump has. And of course, afterwards, plane flying over, pardon some of the background noise. Yeah, Trump had a lot to say, nothing flattering. I didn't bother reading up about it because there's no point to it, okay? If Donald Trump is a president this time here and now, up until 2024, you think he wouldn't throw Biden on the bus and say some things about him? Of course he would. Only it would be a lot more crude and a lot more just, mudslinging rather than putting out facts, okay? Joe Biden emphasized what a failure was on January 6th, how he is the actual threat to democracy, and that he still wants to try to work together with Republicans, especially on the border crisis, which is going to be no easy test. He's still going to show support to Ukraine, to send a message to Putin that what he's doing isn't right, and also to discourage him from trying to invade other countries, which he would clearly do, especially under a Trump presidency, who would just take a knee to Vladimir Putin yet again and let him do whatever he wants. So that's pretty much overall. The icing on the cake, or the cherry on the top, I should say, at the end was they had a senator named Katie Britt from Alabama who recently won. I'd never heard of her. I didn't know anything about her. So I said, okay, let's hear what she has to say. And within 2 minutes, it was just the most ridiculous speech, the rebuttal to the State of the Union that any Republican could put on. It was just nothing about a lot of fear-mongering, a lot of gaslighting. I only watched it for like 2 minutes, and it was just, again, just spewing out more lies and regurgitating a lot of talking points. With everything from bad, how do I know? Because the next day, she got bashed by critics, by the news, by members of her own party, and by other independent media, which just pointed out how ridiculous it was, bad acting. In fact, there was only one person that gave her praise. That was Tommy Tuberville, a Republican who has no respect for the military, doesn't care about America, and quite frankly, he would support somebody like her. I guess the theory was she was doing it to hope to become vice president, or Trump's VP pick, which I don't think that's going to happen. I have no idea who he's going to pick. And one thing I forgot to note on is that when Marjorie Taylor Greene had her little outburst, the pen she handed to had the name of a college student. I'm blanking on the name, I don't know the details of the case, but she was allegedly killed by an undocumented immigrant. And obviously she's trying to, again, play the xenophobic racist card, saying that, like, all migrants are bad and stuff like that. If it was indeed a migrant that killed her, should he be held accountable and brought to justice? Absolutely. But it doesn't draw the conclusion that every single migrant is bad. And like I said before, the GOP doesn't care. Marjorie Taylor Greene does not care about the border. Again, she just wants to fearmonger because she's a racist. And she has no intentions of solving the problem. She doesn't care about fentanyl. She just wants to use, again, somebody else, another victim, as a prop to see, look. And Biden threw that back at her too. I also read that the Sergeant at Arms had asked her to take off her MAGA hat, which she refused to do so. There was a little exchange there. I don't know how heated it was. But of course she didn't do it, because once again, she's got to remind us all what a complete a-hole she is, as if we needed a reminder. So, putting her aside and her stupid antics, bottom line was, I think it was a good State of the Union speech. Now, to MAGA or diehard Trump supporters, it's not going to sway them in any way. Of course not. They probably didn't even watch it. And if they did, there's not going to be any positive takeaway for them towards Biden. They're just going to keep sucking up to Trump. And until Republicans learn to start working more with Biden, they're not going to get anything accomplished. I don't see this border deal making it, unfortunately. But like I said, between things like the infrastructure, which he talked about, the CHIPS Act, which he also talked about, expanding internet access across the country, and also the Affordable Care Act, which he was also expanded, and being able to bring down drug prices. I believe that was the Inflation Act. I could be mistaken there. Biden also emphasized how Trump wanted to undo the Affordable Care Act, which was originally created by Obama, or Obamacare. The problem was when he wanted to do it, he didn't have any contingency plan. He didn't have a backup. So you would have a lot of people stripped of their health care. What are they going to do if they get injured or get seriously ill? They're going to fall into medical debt, and Donald Trump would not do squat to help them out. So Biden's done a lot. He's accomplished a lot. As our favorite bad actress from Alabama said, are you feeling better off now than you were 3 years ago? I think she meant to say 4 years ago, because back then, that's when we were going into a recession because of Donald Trump's failure in handling the pandemic. Something else Biden pointed out. The answer is, yeah, I do feel like we're in a better place, that Americans are better off. Now, is everything perfect? No. Has Biden, done a perfect job? No. He's made some mistakes. He's accomplished a lot, but there's still a lot more to do. There's still a lot of other people out there without health care. And there's still the, crisis at the border that he needs to try and help resolve. To say nothing about Gaza and, continuing aid to Ukraine and doing everything else to help Americans. So, say what you will about him, but he put up he showed a lot more heart and spirit than he did in the last one. And if he continues to do this during the campaign, punching down on Trump, metaphorically speaking, pointing out his failures, And the fact that he wants to be a dictator and take on the likes of somebody like Adolf Hitler, and that fellow MAGA Republicans have no intentions of helping Americans. They got no policies to run on because they've been, too busy catering up to Donald Trump. I think he can take this. I think Joe Biden can take this to victory in 2024. That also boils down to us. Like I said before, get out and vote. Vote blue. I'll talk more about Biden's age and stuff like that, but like I said, I'd be curious to hear your takes on the State of the Union, what you thought about it, regardless of who you are more supportive of, Biden or Trump or somewhere in between. So, anyway, thank you for watching. I really hope you understand.